Welcome to the Brew. We're excited to be with Paulina today. She is with Jim Cramer, and so it's always an honor to have her on. We're going to talk about NVIDIA today. What happened? So it took a dive of 10%. We're going to go over all of it. It's going to be an exciting show. Stay tuned, and we're going to give it all to you in the next few minutes. All right, NVIDIA, what happened, Paulina?
Hey, Molly. Yeah, I think this is a really noteworthy topic because a much loved stock, none other than NVIDIA, has entered into correction territory recently. It has recovered a little bit since then, but correction territory essentially means that the stock has fallen 10% from recent highs. And I'm sure a lot of investors are wondering, is now a time to buy the dip? Is it a good time to accumulate shares now that they have pulled back a little bit? And I have some insight from my research and from conversations I'm having with analysts on the street, and I thought to share them with you today.
Great. You mean analysts on the stage, right? Because you're in the big leagues. All right. So tell us what are you hearing?
Yeah, so first off, NVIDIA, of course, just to set the stage, is a titan in the stock market right now, and its movements are in part, influencing the broader market because it composes so much of the broader S&P 500 market index. And NVIDIA is off roughly 10% from its record highs in March 25th. But as I mentioned, it has slightly recovered. So obviously, NVIDIA, it's a much loved stock on Wall Street right now. Investors have been obsessed with the company's critical role in artificial intelligence. Specifically, there has been incredible demand for NVIDIA's semiconductor chips, and this has just resulted in a massive run in the stock and has reached peak valuation as well. So it seems that investors are essentially trying to find any excuse to add to their NVIDIA position, which is why this pullback is so noteworthy. So there's a couple of things happening here. So NVIDIA has soared to incredible heights. So it's normal actually for a stock to pull back after a massive run. Number two, it could also be the fact that people are paring back their shares to secure some profits. There's a lot of volatility recently, given the uncertainty that's happening in the markets, as well as with inflation rising over the past few readings, and then most recently we are in an upcoming World War III. It seems like, so it makes a lot of sense that there's volatility right now and that the market is pulling back. But there is one particular big glaring reason specific to NVIDIA as to why the stock has pulled back. Should I go into there, or did you want me to pause for a second? Because I know I said a lot.
No, you're good.
Should I keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. All right. So what is this one glaring reason? So it's competition. So what we have on our hands here, Molly, is that there is an AI chip race that's happening. Companies are making their own chips to compete with NVIDIA. So we have Alphabet announcing recently that it's making its own in-house processors. So last week, Alphabet hosted its Google Cloud Next conference, and it introduced its chip called the Google Axion processor. And according to the company, this chip delivers industry-leading performance and energy efficiency that's going to be available for Google Cloud customers this year. And this was a part of updates to its artificial intelligence offerings. So that's Google. But we also have Intel that introduced a new AI chip as well called Gaudi 3. And not to get into that, but essentially, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon also have their own custom chips, and this is all in an effort to compete with NVIDIA's H100 GPUs. That's the name of their chips. So I would say that out of all of the factors that could be pressuring NVIDIA stock, I think this is the one that is most evident and important, the competition that is being outlined by the other tech giants.
Okay, cool. And I do think this war, potential, war happening, that it can also affect not only, are there military applications for CPUs, obviously, and, drone and war itself is changing in that sense, but there's also supply chain issues. Where do you see the effects of what's happening overseas going on with NVIDIA?
That's a really good question. I think that when there's big geopolitical conflicts, it's important to contextualize how global conflicts are impacting companies around the world. Now, I don't foresee this war being a direct issue for NVIDIA because demand for its chips in order to run AI models is so important, and it's going to be a tailwind for years to come. I think what's more on top of mind for companies like NVIDIA and even its competitors is the money that they need to spend in order to build out these AI chips to run the models. Also, just as important is to invest in recruiting AI researchers and engineers to develop the technology. So I would say that is more top of mind, but it's important to keep in the back of our minds how the challenges geopolitically are influencing the broader markets.
Okay, got it. And so you speak of competition, going back there, how do they differ? I'm sure NVIDIA has been known for parallel processing, which adds to speed. I think when you look at some of Tesla's CPUs, they're designed to be smaller and more discrete maneuverability, where NVIDIA is like big compute power. So is there any comparisons across some of the competition that you see might play a role in this recent dip, or a long-term investment fundamentally?
I would say that first off, it's important to consider that a lot of NVIDIA's customers are its competitors. So Meta wants all of the NVIDIA chips that it can buy, but NVIDIA also does business with the other big tech firms as well. So I think that speaks volumes in terms of where it gets its revenues from. And ultimately, I've been talking to some people on the street and reading their notes, and what they're saying is ultimately this is a buying opportunity for NVIDIA on a pullback, because NVIDIA is the best name when it comes to exposure in AI. So we've been seeing analysts increase NVIDIA's price targets. They're saying it's really difficult to compete with NVIDIA just because the performance of its ecosystem of offerings and the partnerships it has is really AAA. And ultimately, they're saying that NVIDIA is just very well positioned to continue taking market share in this space, not only in the near term, but also in the years to come, because that demand for NVIDIA's chips is just not going away.
Right. So just on a side topic, I'm always curious about this Blue Sea Frontier compute cluster. And it's these barges out in the middle of the sea. It's a Nevada company that is just loading NVIDIA chips for futuristic large language models to really have a performance platform to dive into the future. However, it's in the middle, so there's freedom of seas and who, which state is governing it, et cetera. So I would just want to keep an eye on that, and that should be its own deal. But I think fundamentally, on a fundamental level, looking at the CEO, he's been very vocal lately about bringing society in a more equal plane. But that sounds good. Anyone who has a heart, that sounds good. But people are also very about socialism, and is he starting to dip into some of this political stuff, gearing up towards the next elections? And do we see anything on that front? And what because when you're talking about AI, you really have to bring in every conversation about the concern of being a humanist. Are you a humanist, or do you feel that we're just bootstrapped for AI and that's all humans were here on the first place to be? What do you think NVIDIA, and AI is going to play a role in these upcoming elections? What do you see on the streets?
That's a really good question. AI is going to be, if not already, has been incorporated in so much of our everyday lives, and it's been used to help automate activities so we can focus on the more important things. However, the consequence of that, on a side note, is kind of, does that impact our critical thinking? Is that an issue for us humans in general as we move forward? Are we going to be reliant too much on this technology? In terms of how it's going to impact the coverage of politics or just politics in general, I think that's a really good question. I guess initially my thought is, when it comes to AI, it's all about information gathering and the analysis of that information. So I wonder if AI is going to be used in that perspective. And if that's the case, it's strictly dependent on the type of data that's being used. And right now in our economy, data is gold. So if institutions, news organizations, political pundits are using AI in order to kind of automate and interpret and make assumptions around data, they're going to need to have the best data available in order to draw the most thoughtful conclusions on elections. But that also means that accounts for any sort of type of, put that in any context. It's all about the data. If you want data, what do they say? Like, whatever you put in, you get out, or something like that.
Right. It's funny. So when it transferred from Twitter to X, there came to light that there was a lot of biases that were floating internally. And so it'll be interesting to see, let's say someone wants to know about a certain candidate or a bill, or who is monitoring the information that comes out of AI and that people will be using to analyze who they're voting on. That'll be really, and definitely judges. I think people don't pay enough attention about voting for judges. It can become very political. So I think NVIDIA, AI is here to stay. NVIDIA is cornering the market. Their PE ratio is quite high. If you want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, they're at a peak valuation right now. I actually have FactSet open, and their PE ratio is roughly 70, and that is compared to its 5-year historical average of 39.5. So it's very high right now, very high. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Obviously, that's based off of forward earnings, but I think it would be healthy to have that stabilize a bit, and I think that is what we were seeing with this pullback. So I think as investors are trying to figure out when is a good time to accumulate more shares, they do have to keep that valuation in mind.
Yeah. So, what would be your play? So if you're a fundamental trader and you're long-term, versus if you're in the moment, you're concerned with cash flow, immediate cash flow, and you're following trends, what would be your advice? What's the big play?
Mm-hmm. I would say that if you're a long-term fundamental investor, and you want to buy into NVIDIA over time, any chance that there's a pullback is a good opportunity to see if it fits your cost base. But if you're a trader, obviously you're more of a short-term view. You have a short-term view of the market, and I'm not really too plugged into what activities the traders can do in order to capitalize on the pullback. I don't know if maybe options contracts are the way to go there. But I would say for the long-term investor, a pullback would be an opportunity to buy.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. I feel like I have a better idea about NVIDIA, and there's a lot of interesting things. It's one of my favorite topics. So let's keep an eye out at C, because they are building stuff out there. And, if you're long-term investor, it's good to have a balance across all AI companies always, and just to play it safe. And I think we're going to be seeing regulation going forward. We already see it in Europe, so that we'll see how that affects the stock. And other than that, please let us know if you have any questions, if you want us to expand on a topic. But thank you as always, Paulina. It's always just an honor to have you on.
Thank you, Molly. I think you brought a really good point around regulation. Most recently, we saw Sam Altman come out saying that he wants more AI regulation. I think that'll help shape the market as well around the technology.
Yeah, Elon says the same thing. And these are people that are saying that know that they will be confined, but they see the risks. So definitely heed those warnings. But we'll keep, maybe one of the shows we'll take a look at the full regulation across AI, and let us know in the comments if you're interested.
Yeah, that's a great topic.
And now, where do we find all of your articles? Because you do have extensive knowledge and you really do your homework. So where do we find you?
Thank you. Yeah, you can find my stories at cnbc.com/Paulina Lykos, and I write about a whole host of different topics. Trends around technology, but also the health of the consumer and consumer discretionary topics as well. It's a whole host of things. So check it out.
All right. Thanks, Paulina. And we'll see you next Friday.
Thanks, Molly.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All opinions expressed by Tradier Hub contributors are solely the contributors' opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Tradier nor its affiliates and/or subsidiaries. You should not treat any opinion expressed by Hub contributors as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or to follow a particular strategy, but only as an expression of their opinion. The contributors' opinions are based on their own personal research, but neither Tradier nor its affiliates and/or subsidiaries warrants its completeness or accuracy, and it should not be relied upon as such. Any trades or positions discussed or referred to by contributors may or may not be actual live trades or positions. Such information is not intended to be financial or investment advice. Tradier Inc. is the parent company of Tradier Brokerage Inc. Tradier Brokerage Inc. and Tradier Inc. are separate entities with their own products and services. Securities products and services are offered through Tradier Brokerage Inc. Tradier Brokerage Inc. is an independent subsidiary of Tradier Inc., all rights reserved, member FINRA SIPC.